Okay, so welcome back to Lawrence Explains Online Academic Tuition. In this video, we're going to take a look at question 2 on the GCSE English Language paper, GCSE English Language paper 1. So it's paper 1, question 2. So if you haven't seen the first video for this exam breakdown, go back and watch the first video where I read through the source and also go through the first question. So let's get straight onto this question 2. So look in detail at the extract from lines 9 to 15. Now they've provided us with this section of the text. So lines 9 to 15, this paragraph here, they've provided us with this in the question. So we can just kind of work from here. So Mr. Fisher remembered a time, surely not so long ago, when books were golden, imagination soared, the world was full of stories which ran like gazelles and pounced like tigers and exploded like rockets, illuminating minds and hearts. He had seen it happen, had seen whole classes swept away in the fever. In those days, there were heroes, there were dragons and dinosaurs, there were space adventurers and soldiers of fortune and giant apes. In those days, thought Mr. Fisher, we dreamed in colour, though films were in black and white, and good always triumphed in the end. How does the writer use language here to convey Mr. Fisher's views on books and stories of the past? Include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. Okay, so this is an analytical question. Here, let me just give ourselves a little bit of space for us to work in. So I'll put the text up here. And this is an analytical question. And we are looking to analyze form here. So how is the message presented? What is going on with each of these areas here? So let's look at these one at a time. So words and phrases, language features and techniques, they kind of blur into one, to be honest with you. Words and phrases and language features and techniques. So let's just, first of all, let's just look at words and just pick out the relevant information here. So this would be a section on which you would do the point, quotation, explanation approach. So let's just pick out a few decent quotes that we can look at here. So we've got books were golden, imagination soared, stories ran like gazelles, pounced like tigers, exploded like rockets, illuminating minds and hearts. Okay, so I'm going to say here, in terms of words and phrases, we've got in the first couple of lines, first few lines there, we've got a cluster of verbs show dynamic, exciting stories. And those verbs would be run, pounced, exploded, so this gives us a sense of the creative energy. There is also the technique of personification as well there. So we're actually looking there straight into technique. So we're already kind of combining techniques in there, but I'll maybe come back to that point. We've also got a semantic field of light. Golden and illuminating. And the process of education, and storytelling. It is associated with light very often. Is there anything else that we notice in here? And we've got all of these, we call them archetypes, heroes, dragons, and dinosaurs. So I'm going to put here language, We've got all of these different archetypes. Heroes, dragons, space adventurers. I know I've missed one out there, but that's okay. Soldiers of fortune. So Mr. Fisher is touching upon all of these different archetypes, these kind of stock figures from literature and storytelling. Okay, so that is enough for words and phrases. Let's continue this on the next page. I'll just get rid of this, come back to that. But I think there's still more for us to discuss here. But that is words and phrases. How about language features and techniques? I'll put this in a new color. Language features and techniques. So I'm going to talk about the personification here. These stories ran like gazelles. So we've got a personification effect. It's the stories ran, leapt. What was the other one? Sorry, they pounced rather. So stories ran and pounced. So with this personification effect, it really creates a sense of it. This idea that the stories had energy, they had life. These are very dynamic verbs here. So that personification effect, it also gives a sense of the stories are, some kind of a living organism as well. So that's, I think, an important technique that is used there. Anything else here? Swept away in fever. So we've got it's really a metaphor there, or sort of an abstract use of language. So an abstract language, maybe even a metaphor. It's a sort of common metaphor, arguably a cliche, but swept away in the fever. Swept away in the fever. So this idea, it's almost a mixed metaphor actually. So I would say there we have an abstract use of language and a mixed metaphor when the students are described as being swept away in the fever. They kind of, suggests this almost like there's a current, or there's a kind of powerful effect of the stories. And fever, fever is obviously like a heightened state of, you're kind of hot and you're kind of hot and overheating, and actually when you do have a fever, you mentally become quite stimulated as well. And if you've ever had a fever, but it's quite an interesting effect. So yeah, that's the use of language there. Let's have a look. Is there anything else? Sorry, just to go back to this. Language features and techniques. We do have a nice technique of opposition in that last sentence there. So we've got a kind of oppositional structure. You can also, could you call it a dichotomy? No, I'll just say it's an oppositional structure between light and colour and black and white. So the movies are in black and white and imaginations are in colour. So this suggests that the imagination supersedes the presentation of action in movies. So this oppositional structure kind of shows that, in a way, the superiority of the imagination in comparison to movies, which were in black and white, the imagination's in colour. So that's a nice kind of visual opposition there. Let's just briefly look at sentence structure as well. So, by the way, you wouldn't necessarily have to include all of this at all. You know, maybe just 1 or 2 points of each of the ones I'm making here would actually be more than enough. You've only got, you know, maybe about 10 minutes to do this question, possibly less, to be honest with you, probably 7 or 8 minutes. So I'm going through almost every possible point, but you wouldn't have to go through all of these different points. Sentence forms. Let's look at this last one here. I would go with that first sentence there. Very long. It uses very long sentences. 2 very long sentences here. So we've got long list-like sentences, full of information. They're kind of overflowing, actually. They're overflowing with ideas. And that kind of reflects the description of the events that are being talked about, this idea of, you know, the overflowing imagination. The other thing as well, I would say, with sentence structure here would be, I'll probably look at this last one here. We've got this list of archetypes: heroes, dragons and dinosaurs, space adventurers, soldiers of fortune, and giant apes. So again, this is kind of list, and he uses semicolons to denoting well-developed items on the list, so long items on the list. And again, it's this idea that, you know, kind of overflowing full effect. This is a very long, tortuous, overflowing sentence, and it reflects the imagination of previous generations of students. So that's what I would say about the sentence structure there. So, as I say, this is really, we should be, you know, overly comprehensive for 8 marks. You know, you could probably just pick out maybe the first 2 there, maybe one of those, and then maybe 1 or 2 of these, and then maybe just, you know, briefly mention sentence structure as well. You could probably pick out 1 point from each of the sections that I've just written. Actually, that'd probably be enough to get you the 8 marks, provided it was well explained. So that's just a bit of an exercise in breaking down this this passage. Obviously, it's important to make sure you do only focus on the lines they've asked you to. That's a real rookie mistake that students can sometimes make. You'll get no credit for analysing other sections of text, so make sure that you focus on the relevant sections of text. Okay, we will leave things there for this question. I'm going to come back in the next video and we're going to look at question 3 on this paper.